Thank you for downloading this Brum Radio podcast. For more podcasts, visit brumradio.com.
And now for your listening pleasure, it's the Brum Picture Show, brought to you by Brum Radio.
Hello and welcome to the Brum Picture Show, the weekly film show brought to you by Birmingham-based community cinema collective Screen B14. My name is Paul Vernon, and on this week's show, we thought we'd choose a theme that ties in with Screen B14's upcoming screening of Buena Vista Social Club at the Cuban Embassy in Moseley on the 11th of July. And what theme could that be, I hear you ask? Wim Wenders films? Latin American films? Music documentaries? No. We're going to be talking about films made in 1999. What? You heard me. But Paul, isn't that topic somewhat vague and arbitrary, I hear you ask? Yes, probably, but I don't care, because for me, personally, 1999 is my favourite year in cinema. And who better to join me on this episode than someone who, when I suggested doing this topic, said, "But Paul, I don't really like many films from 1999. That's right. We're sticking with the Brum Picture Show tradition of discussing topics that at least one of the presenters is completely ambivalent about. But nevertheless, her commitment to the show knows no bounds, and she's here once again, our very own social media queen and notoriously hard-to-please filmmaking genius, the great Nadine O'Mahony. How's it going, Nadine?
Good. It's very caliente at the moment.
Sí, muy caliente. Scotchio in the studio today. Summer has come to Birmingham for the next few days, so we're delighted to be here in the studio waffling on about films and not outside in the sunshine.
I'm melting a bit, so I'm having a great time.
Well, thanks for soldiering on through the heat and joining me again in the studio, as always. Now it is time for the news section. So, Nadine, any news items caught your eye this week in the movie world?
Feels like it's been a bit of a slow news week to me.
I agree.
But I did catch the new trailer for Nosferatu.
Oh, yes. The new Robert Eggers remake. Yes, that's exciting. Yeah.
I mean, it looks cool. It's in colour, because all the pictures I'd seen had been like blue, like a kind of blue, black and white.
Yeah, me
But
too.
there's only some of that in there. The rest of it's in colour. So that's a departure from The Lighthouse.
Yes, that's true.
Although I suppose he made The Northman in between. So
They were
I guess
definitely.
He does do colour.
Yeah, he's made films with colour in, that's for sure.
But no, it's a star-studded cast. Nicholas Hoult, Lily Rose Depp, another Nepo baby. If you were listening to our last episode.
Yes, last episode we were talking about Nepo babies.
Bill Skarsgård, another Nepo baby.
Yeah.
Willem Dafoe. I don't think he's a Nepo baby.
No.
I hope not.
I don't think Willem Dafoe has parents. I think he just spawned spontaneously. What do they call that? Just spontaneous generation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly what they call it.
Yeah, he's like a fly.
If you're a Greek philosopher.
Yes, exactly. Well, that's exciting. So you think it's going to be good?
I hope so. I mean, I really loved The Lighthouse and I enjoyed The Northman as well. The Vivitch wasn't a favourite of mine, but even Robert Eggers has sort of said he didn't quite nail it on that one. But did introduce the world to Anya Taylor-Joy.
It did, absolutely.
But yeah, definitely looking forward to it. And I like a bit of vampire, a bit of classic, gothic vampire.
Absolutely.
Fun.
Yeah, well, we've got that to look forward to.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
Christmas, apparently.
Oh, that is Christmassy, isn't it?
Yeah, it had some great tagline that was like, give into the darkness or something, I don't know. Succumb to the darkness, I think it was.
What, is that to make it Christmassy because The Darkness had a Christmas number 2, famously, because they lost out to Gary Jules and his cover of Mad World from the Donnie Darko soundtrack.
Maybe.
I'm gonna say that it is.
I'll take your word for it.
Yay! Well, it's funny that you should mention the Vivitch, because you may remember last week I had a distinctly animal-based news section, and I was saying to the listeners, please do let me know if you want more animal movie news. And they
didn't.
No, they did. They did. Yeah, absolutely. So regular listener Chris Davies,
Oh,
he sent me, I don't know whether this is news, but it was just more a little bit of information about the goat from The Vavitch
Ooh.
by Robert Eggers, of whom we were just speaking.
Ooh.
And he told me that apparently Charlie the goat, who played Black Phillip in The Witch, was so terrifying and frustrating on set that he was not allowed to work in show business again and was retired to a farm in North Carolina. So
I feel like there's a few actors who should have been retired.
well, yes,
Like
exactly.
that.
I feel that goats,
feel like-
get a harder time.
Yeah.
Humans get away with a lot more
No
than a goat
second
would.
chances.
Exactly. Poor goat. But maybe Charlie the goat didn't want to have a movie career. Maybe he's quite happily
Chewing the cud.
yeah, and just being a goat. So that's all right. And then another listener of the show, Chris Todd, sent me a story that
We
was
have another listener. I'm in shock.
Yeah, we have another listener. It is amazing.
Another listener called Chris. Do we have any listeners who aren't called
Oh my
Chris?
goodness, yes, he's called Chris, isn't he?
Or who isn't related to Paul.
No.
If you're a listener who's not named Chris or related to Paul, please do email us in. Just to say hey, just so we know you exist.
Because this is getting silly now.
Yeah.
Another Chris. That hadn't even occurred to me. But yeah, he sent me a non-movie related but donkey related news article about a donkey that had escaped and then was found years later living his best life with some elks.
But it's not movie related.
Nothing to do with movies, but he sent me that as a gesture that he'd been listening to the show.
So we're just a donkey and movie based.
Yeah, mainly donkeys.
Show.
This is going to be the Brum Donkey Show before you know it. Mark my words. You don't seem pleased.
I haven't prepared for a donkey based
Well, you'll have
radio
to.
show.
You'll have to,
I don't know much about them.
Well, you'll have to get learning. Anyway, so one more bit of donkey news
Oh, great.
that is actually related to films. And this is that Eddie Murphy has finally delivered a huge update on Shrek 5 and the fact that there's going to be a donkey standalone movie.
Yay.
Yeah. That's it, really. There's going to be a donkey standalone movie.
And a Shrek 5.
And a Shrek 5 or 4 or whatever it is. So, yeah. I think that's nice.
Great.
That's
what
nice.
the world needs more of, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's donkey related. In non-donkey news, we are going to be reviewing Russell Crowe's new film, The Exorcism, later. So I thought it would be appropriate to give us some Exorcist-related news. And that is the fact that Mike Flanagan is going to be making a Exorcist film of some sort, and that has finally got a release date of Friday the 13th, March 13th, 2026. So, apparently, so this is going to be a radical new take, and crucially, it is going to have nothing to do with the other films, apparently, because you may remember when that terrible The Exorcist Believer came out, they were talking about that being a trilogy of sorts, and that didn't do very well, rightfully so, because it wasn't very good. But now they're doing another one because, IP, it sells. People want things that they know, and yeah, it's going to be with Mike Flanagan on board, and I'm kind of excited about that because I'm a big Mike Flanagan fan.
What's Mike done before?
He did Doctor Sleep, which I really, really loved, and he also did Oculus. Do you remember that with Justin Long and the mirrors?
No, but I do like Justin Long.
Yeah, and mirrors. Do you like mirrors?
They're useful when you need to look at a reflection of yourself.
Can't argue with that. And, he also did Hush and Ouija, The Origin of Evil. And I suppose recently he's been more famous for doing Netflix series like The Haunting of Hill House and that Midnight Mass thing. So I think
he's quite popular.
Yeah, he's good at what he does. So hopefully they'll make a decent Exorcist film. But there's also apparently Tom Hardy has addressed the possibility of returning to the Mad Max universe for the potential prequel Wasteland. And he says, I don't think that's happening. Yeah, and that's the story. So that's sad.
We could have guessed that.
I don't know. Well, it's just, apparently, Furiosa has just passed the $168 million mark. and its budget was $168 million. So,
That's not including marketing.
I know.
Making that,
but it's early days. It's only been out a month or so that means that it will be in the green soon enough.
I mean, I'm absolutely sure it'll make a profit eventually once it goes to VOD and on demand and all that. But, the first one wasn't a massive hit. Well, not the first one. Fury Road wasn't a massive hit. That just kind of scraped its budget back.
Yeah.
But it was critically acclaimed, so... Yeah, we'll see.
Who knows? Maybe in 10 years' time.
I was going to say,
we'll
probably
get
in
that.
10 years' time when it's made a profit.
And Tom Hardy will probably be too old then.
That's fine. Just be casting with a young
young Tom Hardy.
Yeah, who's young? Like Timothy Chalamet. He'll be in his grizzled... he'll be in his grizzled mode then. He'll have beefed up and...
Well, yeah, I like the idea of Timothy Chalamet being Max. That sounds ridiculous.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Mark my words.
Yes, well, there we go. The words are marked. 10 years' time, we'll report back.
Zendaya as Furiosa or something. That'd be cool. I'm just casting them in everything.
Yeah.
It's like this is how you make money.
Yeah.
Chalamet and Zendaya. Boom. Job done.
Sorted. See, that's why Nadine should be a casting director. Really.
Yeah, I just got 2 names on my list.
Very good. So there we go. That's some movie news. Will that do? Yeah.
That'll do, pig.
That'll do, pig. That'll do. You are listening to the Brum Picture Show on Brum Radio, and we are talking about films from 1999 today. That's right. Screen B14 are going to be screening the Buena Vista Social Club on the 11th of July at the Cuban Embassy in Moseley, and that film was released in 1999. So we thought we'd dig out our time machine and go back in time to 1999. So here we go. That's the going back in time noise, in case you didn't realise. Now, even though we are 25 years on from 1999, which is a significant anniversary, you might say it's quite arbitrary choosing films from 1999 as a topic, and you may well be right.
I did say that, yes.
Yes, you did say that, but I put it to you that just because it happens to have loads of my own personal favourite films doesn't mean that everyone else doesn't agree, because they do agree.
Well, I have noticed that Broadway cinema and the Prince Charles have a 1999 season. Because I did, when you suggested it to me at first, I was like, 1999, that's just a random year. Like,
yeah, but it's not just a random year. It's significant culturally. Even at the time, there was a sense that it was a special year in film, 1999, with Entertainment Weekly running an article called 1999, the year that changed movies. And that article was released in 1999. And they declared that it was the year that all the old boring rules about cinema started to crumble. Yeah. And since then, there's been Guardian articles about it. The Criterion Channel, they did their own special 1999 category on their streaming service. And director Edgar Wright himself proclaimed it to be his favourite year in cinema, despite the fact The Phantom Menace was released that year. So people have written books about it. So there's Brian Raftery, who writes for Wired magazine, amongst others. He released a book this year called Best Movie Year Ever, in which he makes my case for me. So yes, I put it to you that lots of people are of the opinion that 1999 is a culturally significant year. So we've got films like Eyes Wide Shut, The Matrix, we've got American Beauty, The Green Mile, The Sixth Sense, Fight Club, The Virgin Suicides, Magnolia, The Phantom Menace, as we mentioned earlier. Yeah, and then we've got stuff like The Mummy, we've got The Blair Witch Project. Did we mention Sleepy Hollow, The Ninth Gate, all that? And then we've also got, most importantly of all, Muppets from Space. And, you know, obviously, that's a very muted reaction to Muppets from Space. You need to watch Muppets from Space. It's got Hollywood Hulk Hogan in it and Muppets. And was also
in space.
Yeah, they're from space. It's also the first Muppet film to feature Pepe, the king prawn. I'm a king prawn. Okay. No, it's brilliant. You don't know what you're missing. But it's just a remarkable year. So it's an interesting time because not only were the old kings of cinema still going strong. So obviously, Kubrick released his last film, Eyes Wide Shut, in 1999, and then promptly died. Well, actually, he died before it was released, didn't he?
Or did he die? Or was he killed? Is it a conspiracy?
I've forgotten. Yes,
if you want to hear my views on Eyes Wide Shut, then do listen to our alternative Christmas episode where we discuss it in length.
Yes, So go back to that one, because that's some interesting theories floated around. But and Martin Scorsese was being his adventurous self. So one of his more radical Paul Schrader collaborations, Bringing Out the Dead, was released in 1999. And of course, David Lynch, my darling David Lynch, he gave us The Straight Story in 1999.
It's got to be the least Lynchian film ever made.
But it's still amazing.
By Lynch.
It's still really great. And then we've got David Cronenberg. He came out with Existenz. We've got Polanski. He came out with The Ninth Gate. So you got all the kind of legacy filmmakers coming out with some really strong work still. But then you've got the early works of the next generation of filmmaking darlings. So you've got Paul Thomas Anderson with Magnolia, just firmly cementing himself after Boogie Nights that he's a chap to watch. Of course, Sam Mendes with American Beauty hit the scene. Sofia Coppola made her debut with The Virgin Suicides. And then we've got Spike Jonze and Charlie Kaufman, rocking up with Being John Malkovich. And then it's also a time that the studios were starting to actually give some of the indie filmmaking darlings some real money. So we've got Spike Lee being given a nice big budget with Summer of Sam. Michael Mann came out with The Insider with Russell Crowe, who we'll be talking about later on. David Fincher, they gave him loads of money to make Fight Club, which was wicked. And then,
that sounds like a very 99 thing to say.
Wicked. That's wicked. Exactly. So I don't know. So it was an amazing time. And it's also just a time where studios were more willing to take risks and actually, put some money into these radical indie filmmakers. So I think that is the main difference of 1999, is that it was a time of financial prosperity in movies. So did you know, in 1997, that's when DVDs started being released, and they reckon that that's one of the things that kind of sparked all this kind of innovation, is that the studios just had all this extra cash that they were just started to throw it around, and it's like, sure, let's make this music video director who's made no films just make a mad thing about John Cusack crawling into John Malkovich's brain. They were like, sure, let's finance that, shall we? But I don't know. I just think that films from 1999 are the bee's knees. I think it was a it was a really special time in history. Like we've spoken about this before on the show. I think when we were talking about Fight Club on whatever episode, in a way, it was kind of the peak of civilization. The biggest worry we had was Y2K. 9/11 hadn't happened yet. The internet was in its optimistic infancy before social media ruined society for good. And there was just a general sense that things were going to change in the new millennium. Things were going to be all right. But
I saw a meme the other day which was about films from those times, how it was all Gen Xers complaining about having a job and selling out. And now millennials are like, we wish we could afford things.
Exactly. Please give us a job.
It feels like, Fight Club, his biggest problem is like he's got so much stuff from IKEA, like boo-hoo.
Exactly. So it's
like we want to heat our homes and have food at the same time.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's just it's a very specific period of time, and it just gave rise to loads of really memorable stuff. I mean, I know, you could say that about every year. Every year's always got something good. But I don't know, it just seems to me that 1999, it's just an abundance. And because nowadays, there's often times where I'm like, oh, I want to go to the cinema. What's on? And there's nothing on. In 1999, there was always something on. That's what I say.
I feel like when you look back at past years, we're only really looking at the good stuff, aren't we? Because I was trying to look, and I'll talk about what I think the best year was soon.
Okay.
But I was looking at, say, because I use Letterboxd a lot, and the great thing about that is you can search. I've logged all the films I can remember that I've ever watched. So I've logged 2,581 films and limited series. So I can go through and filter them by year. And I was looking at some of the older years and thinking, oh, these are all great. But then it's like, well, of course they're all great because they're from, 30 years ago. I'm not going to go and seek out rubbish films from like 1975 or whatever. Like you only, by now, like you've gotten all the information of like, these are the good films.
The films that stood the test of time. Yeah.
And I think it's just far enough away, but just recent enough that there's an abundance of films from that time available. Because the last year was a really good year for film. But there's probably loads of films that I haven't seen that were out last year because I just haven't been able to get my hands on them yet. And so I think part of it is that sort of filtration process. And I wondered, were they saving up good films? Because it was like the millennium, were they worried? Maybe they thought we weren't going to be able to watch any films after the millennium bug struck. So
I'll get these made.
But I do think as well, because I was looking at like 1989, and that was quite a good year for film. It's not my favourite.
Oh, okay.
But I was wondering, is there something about the end of decades? Like if you went back in time and looked at the end of every decade, would there be like an abundance of great films?
Well, lots of people argue that 1939 was one of the best years for film because it had The Wizard of Oz and it had, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington and Gone with the Wind and all that
Wizard
kind of
of Oz
stuff.
was, a flap at the
right,
time.
Yeah.
So if you'd asked someone in 1945 or whatever how great 1939 was, they would have said,
Yeah, it was rubbish. Yeah.
But we can look back now and say, oh, yeah.
Oh, I think they had other things on their mind in that.
Maybe.
The 5 years in between that.
Yeah, true. But maybe that's part of it as well, because the years afterwards, there was a dearth because of what was going on around the world. So it made that era look especially good.
Yeah.
So now, is it nostalgia? Is it just, we're at that age where it's like, oh, I remember that. I was young.
I will admit that is possibly a factor. But yeah, I put it to you, the fact that Entertainment Weekly article came out in 1999, there's definitely a sense that something special was going on at the time. But you're not convinced, are you, Nadine?
Yeah, let's get into, go on. You give me the best films of 99.
Okay, well,
try and win me over.
I'm only going to give you, because we're going to be discussing later our favourite films, or at least a film that we want to talk about from 1999. So I'm going to save that one. So I'm just going to give you a top 9. In no particular order, I would say Existence, The Blair Witch Project, Fight Club, The Straight Story, The Ninth Gate, Being John Malkovich, Magnolia, Eyes Wide Shut, American Beauty. Oh, that's 9, because I was going to save one.
Yeah.
But I've got to put Muppets from Space in there. Sorry. But there you go. But that's just, I found it impossible. That's the thing. When you're struggling to create a top 10 out of all the films from a year, then that's got to be a good year, right? Because basically, it's a top 20.
I struggle to pad mine out.
Yeah, no, well, we're very opposing on this one, I think. 'Cause I love it.
American Beauty, I remember watching that on video not long after it'd come out.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing the adverts for it and thinking, this looks great. And then I think me, my mum and my sister was watching it, and my sister gave up first and went to bed. And then I got to the point, this isn't a spoiler, but there's like this guy makes a film about a plastic bag floating in the wind.
Yeah.
And that's just, I was out then.
You're out.
I was out. So I don't think I've ever seen it to the end, but I just couldn't. I was just like, I'm off.
Wow.
And then my mum watched it to the end, and then I had to ask her what happened. When she explained what happened in the film, I was just like, that sounds terrible. And, I just wasn't impressed.
Oh, that's a shame. I remember, to be fair, it's not a film I've seen in a very long time, but I think it was one of those films that I saw at a certain age that it was just like, I was like, oh, this is so profound.
I felt it was pretentious.
Profound, pretentious, potato.
One man's profound is another woman's pretentious.
But yeah, no, it's really hard because there's just so many. Like Sleepy Hollow is one of my favourite Tim Burton films, and that's probably the last really properly Tim Burton film that's good. And then, even stuff like Guest House Paradiso, the Bottom film. That's, it's great.
That's in your top 10 now.
No, but it's,
Okay.
it's films that I'm very fond of. Dogma, of course, I really like that. The Limey, the Steven Soderbergh film, the Broke Down Palace, that's great. That's about the teenage drug smugglers. Then, you got things like Three Kings and all that kind of stuff. And Drop Dead Gorgeous, that's good. Yes, Go, that's brilliant. Ed TV. There's loads. So yeah, go on, Nadine. What's your top 10 that you struggle to even think of?
Well, I've got to
10.
say, you just mentioned Dogma.
Yeah.
That's one of my lowest rated films of 99. I was thinking I'd be better off with like list of lowest films like Notting Hill. You know, the film set in Notting Hill where there's not a single black person.
Well, it's in Richard Curtis' world, Yeah. There's no black people in Richard Curtis' world.
Well,
you just got to accept that.
But it's Notting Hill. It's like making a film called Handsworth with only white people. It's insane. The Carnival. They couldn't even have put the Carnival in there.
No.
Like, if I was going to make a film called Notting Hill,
I know.
it would have to have the Carnival in it. But anyway.
Oh, Lake Placid. That's another good one.
Anyway, I haven't even seen it.
Pushington, that's another good one. Billy Bob.
I feel like it's one of those. It's a very, excuse me if you're a woman who loves 1999. I feel like a lot of these films are very blokey films, like Cine Bro favourites.
Well, I'm a very blokey bloke, don't you know?
So a lot of Cine Bro favourites like Fight Club and The Matrix. And I remember somebody waxing lyrical about Office Space, and I've just...
Yeah, people are very fond of that.
Just kind of mid. Again, it was another thing of like, oh, I've got a job and security. Boo-hoo. But anyway, I'm just being mean now.
Yeah.
But yeah, my top 10... There are films that I like from it, but for me, it's a very sort of 3-star, 3.5 star year. So it's not.
Wow.
I'm just looking at my letterbox now. I haven't rated a single film from 1999 5 stars.
Oh my goodness. I've got like 20.
I've got
20.
3 4-star. I'll tell you what my 3 4-star films are from 99.
Go on.
Eyes Wide Shut,
Yeah.
which are discussed in the Christmas episode, so I won't be discussing that in detail today.
Okay.
Sleepy Hollow, which at the time I didn't much care for it, but like you say, going back, it was like the last of the great Tim Burton films, and it is beautiful, but I think the character was annoying to me at the time, constantly fainting and stuff. I was like, what's that about? But anyway, other films I like. These are films I like, don't get me wrong, but they're not my fave. So I've got Episode 1.
Of course.
Of course. Bowfinger. I remember going to see that at the cinema with my sister. Saw it, I think, once or twice, but it was good. South Park, Bigger, Longer and Uncut.
Yes.
I saw that at the cinema with my sister again, and I remember there was this old man with like a flat cap. He was sat in the cinema, and at the end he got up and left, and we were like, did he walk into the right movie?
Yeah.
Like, he just looked so out of place.
I remember seeing that film for the first time, like when I was probably far too young to watch it. But I just remember just being blown away because I just never heard that much swearing in my life. And I was like, oh, wow.
I don't think I've ever revisited it. That's the thing.
I'd like to.
The Sixth Sense,
Yeah.
which at the time was like critically acclaimed.
Yeah.
But again, I guessed the twist. So that was annoying. But, it was probably the best ever M. Night Shyamalan film. And it was... When he made that film, I don't think people can appreciate now. Like, he was the next big thing.
Yeah.
Like, he was the golden boy at that time. Other films, I like Cider House Rules, but I didn't love it. The Mummy, my mum loves The Mummy, but I didn't love it. East is East is a good, solid film. Yeah. Snow Falling on Cedars is a rare one that I'd like to mention. I love the cinematography in that. Angela's Ashes.
Yes, of course.
Yeah. But again, all these are just kind of films that I quite liked. Talented Mr. Ripley, great cinematography. But it's not one of my faves. So I just feel like it's a bit mid.
Wow. Okay. Well, there we go. Well, it's fair to say that Nadine and I differ on this. but I feel it's debatable we will ever have a year like it again. These days studios are scared and they're more risk averse. There isn't the money there was back then. And now even legends like Scorsese and Coppola are struggling to find funding. So Scorsese had to turn to streaming services and Coppola had to start a wine industry. So I don't know. I'm not sure we'll ever go back to that. It seems, there's a lot more. There's groundbreaking stuff happening on TV, but I don't know. I think there's just something lightning in a bottle about 1999, and I don't think it's going to get better.
Well, I will refute you in a minute.
Okay, very good. You're listening to the Brum Picture Show on Brum Radio, and we have been discussing 1999 films this week. So, our favourite films from 1999. Now, Nadine, you've said that you are mainly ambivalent about most films in 1999, but nevertheless, you have chosen a film to begrudgingly talk to us about.
Yeah, I've decided to highlight the Joel Schumacher film 8mm.
Ah, yes, Joel Schumacher.
As I have talked about Eyes Wide Shut previously, and I am a massive Joel Schumacher fan.
Yeah.
Batman, not included. But I love The Last Boys. The Last Boys is genuinely one of my all-time faves. I think Flatliners still stands up really well.
I forgot that was him. Falling Down.
Yeah. And 8mm.
Yeah.
Starring Nicolas Cage, but a more subdued Cage. So if you're looking for some Cage, there is some Cage rage. But he intentionally actually said to Joel Schumacher, I want to, play a much more sort of internal character, much more subdued character. Will you help me? So he's trying to rein it in. He was very hot at that time. As you mentioned, Bringing Out the Dead, he'd done that.
Yeah.
He was kind of on a roll. They'd originally wanted to cast Russell Crowe in this role, and I actually wish they had, because that would have been amazing.
Yeah, that would be interesting.
And Joaquin Phoenix is also in this film, so to have them teamed up in another film together would have been just brilliant. And it was penned by the screenwriter who wrote Seven Evan.
Andrew Kevin Walker.
Yeah. Although he has disowned the film.
Has he?
as Joel Schumacher got another writer in and they did some rewrites.
Oh.
And he felt like it was watered down, that it wasn't his original vision for the film. But I think it's definitely one worth watching. I was really surprised to find that the Rotten Tomatoes score is only 23%.
Oh, that's low.
That is low. And I think it really is due a reevaluation. It's a dark film. For some, not as dark, if your name's Andrew Kevin Walker, not as dark as they would have liked. But it's not lighthearted. I think the main reason that I watched this film was because Joaquin Phoenix was in it, and I was going through a letting me watch every Joaquin Phoenix film ever made phase. James Gandolfini's also in it, pre The Sopranos.
Oh.
Peter Stormare is in it as a creepy guy. That's
Cool.
out of character for him. And it's very, if you've ever seen Hardcore by Paul Schrader, it feels very in that vein of films. So just like a brief kind of synopsis of it. Nick Cage is a private detective hired by an elderly woman whose husband was, super rich millionaire guy who's died. And she finds this 8mm film and it purports to be a snuff film. And she asks Nick Cage to discover if it was real or not. And he tells her that it's an urban legend and that, of course it's not real. These things are never real. And she says, well, we'll just check anyway. And that's the beginning of the film. And it does go into some dark places. Again, like I said, for some people, they felt it wasn't dark enough. But it's not, if you want to watch something happy and optimistic, this is not the film. What I do like about it is I like the restraint in it. So yes, it's based around this very dark, disturbing film. We only see sort of glimpses of that film. What Joel Schumacher's sort of genius was to play everything on Nick Cage's face. So we see his reaction to the film. rather than showing us the film itself, because, you know, our imagination is much worse than anything he could have put on screen. And I think it's a revenge film. It's a noir, and it really goes for it at one point. Like, it really gets into that kind of gothic tinge 1940s kind of rain-soaked noir imagery, which I like. The soundtrack's really cool and interesting. You know, it's in the days of you know, it's pre-internet being as big as it was. So he's having to do some proper legwork, go out, you know, you like your procedurals, but he goes around and he interviews people and he looks through files and stuff. So I think you'd love it, Paul. But there's some exciting stuff too. There's some action and there's some twists and turns along the way. And like I said, Joaquin Phoenix is just absolutely brilliant in it as Max California, wearing this kind of weird crop top thing with blue hair and a nose ring. I think Nick Cage does a decent performance. I would have loved to have seen Russell Crowe. James Gandolfini, again, is a brilliant scumbag. So I think it's worth a watch and worth a reevaluation. Why not give it a go?
Yeah, no, it's been a very long time since I've seen that film. I need to revisit it. Thanks, Nadine, for finding a film from 1999 you care about vaguely. Well, my pick, like, I wouldn't say this is absolutely my favourite, but it is still definitely one of my favourites. It's a film that I don't really hear people talking about very often, so I thought I'd give it a little bit of a mention in the hope that more people watch it. So this is the cannibal western comedy horror film Ravenous.
Oh,
yes.
You like your cannibal films, don't you?
I do. Apparently so. But yeah, I just love this film. So it's directed by Antonia Bird, who's a British director who started out directing episodes of EastEnders and Casualty before directing the Robert Carlyle gangster film Face,
which I watched recently. That's a decent film.
Yeah, there you go. And so's this. And it stars Guy Pearce, Robert Carlyle, Jeffrey Jones, and David Arquette. It's set in 1840s California and follows Guy Pearce's character, who is a deserter from the Mexican-American War, who is sent in disgrace to a remote snowy outpost with a bunch of other outcasts, like those priests that they send off to Craggy Island or something. And at some point, a bedraggled Robert Carlyle turns up seeking shelter, claiming that his wagon train became stranded and that the group had to resort to cannibalism, whilst their leader, Captain Ives, resorted to murder. Now, this concerns one of the Native Americans at the camp, who is all too aware of the concept of Wendigo, that those who consume human flesh become corrupted by it and gain the power of the deceased. Nevertheless, those at the outpost are convinced to form a rescue party to rescue any survivors and capture Captain Ives. Can Robert Carlyle be trusted? You'll have to watch it to find out. Yeah. So I love this film. So it's obviously inspired by the story of the Donner Party and Alfred Packer. And if you've listened to the show before, we've spoken about that story before in my review of Cannibal, the musical. And it had a very troubled production, with the original director Milko Manchevsky being fired 3 weeks into production. He was then replaced by Raher Gosnell, but that didn't go down well either, and there were rumours that the cast mutinied on set. And then eventually Robert Carlyle then suggested Antonia Bird to come on board, because obviously they'd worked together on Face, and she finally managed to finish the film, but she was not pleased with the conditions that the studio had left for her. So it was a very difficult production, but I think what came out of it is just wonderful. Now, I think it's great because it perfectly nails the tone. So it's very much a black comedy, but crucially, it's very scary and very suspenseful. And I think that is something that a lot of horror comedies forget to do. And I think it's one of the best films to kind of get that balance between horror and comedy right since American Werewolf in London, really. Like, you really are gripped by it, but it's quite a laugh as well, despite all the cannibal stuff. And it's thematically quite dense, really. It's exploring stuff like colonialism and and capitalism and addiction, because, basically Wendigo, it's about you becoming addicted to eating human flesh and whatnot. And it's also a comment on genocide. But yeah, it didn't do particularly well at the time, critically or commercially. But I think it's gained a bit of a cult following since. But yeah, my hope is that by talking about it here, I can, help its following grow a little bit, and that you'll think to check it out. It's also got a great soundtrack by Michael Nyman and Damon Albarn from Blur, which is famously Rupert of Screen B14's favourite band of all time. So there you go. It's definitely one worth checking out. It's just great. So there we go. That was our favourite films of 1999, and bless you, Nadine, for
I tried.
for trying to feign some enthusiasm for this week's topic. But before we go, before we bring this section to a close, Nadine, your rebuttal. What is the greatest year in film?
Well, Paul, you mentioned earlier that there hasn't been a year as good for film since 1999. You feel like that was the last great year, the best year, perhaps?
Yeah.
Well, I put it to you that there has been a year as good as 1999, perhaps even better.
Mm-hmm.
My favourite film year,
Okay.
and this might surprise you,
It might.
2014,
Huh.
which is exactly 10 years ago.
Yes.
And I do wonder, is there something in our brains
Yeah.
that says that film, 10 years and 20 years and 15 years ago was amazing?
We just love anniversaries.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to think what was made in 2014.
Well, I'm going to tell you some of the modern greats.
Okay.
Okay, so some of my favourites.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got like 5-star things from 2014.
Okay.
And the rest is, I struggle. I don't think there's anything, is there anything below a 3-star? It's all pretty good. But I'll give you my fave. So we've got Whiplash.
Okay.
Damien Chazelle's debut.
Okay.
Nightcrawler.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Jake Gyllenhaal classic. Birdman, which is, again, one of my favourite films ever.
Really?
Yeah.
It's okay.
It's great.
All right, cool.
A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night.
Yeah, all right.
Oh, my God, I love that film. Gun Girl.
Yes.
Interstellar.
Yeah.
Pride, which we showed a 10th anniversary screening of recently. The Book of Life. The Duke of Burgundy. Black Coal Thin Ice, which you probably haven't seen, but it's a really good Chinese neon noir. 71, I think, a film that will grow in appreciation as time goes by.
That's a very good film, but come on.
Grand Budapest Hotel, Boyhood, Guardians of the Galaxy, It Follows, What We Do in the Shadows, The Babadook, Selma, The Guest, Song of the Sea, Cartoon Saloon, Girlhood. What else have we got? John Wick.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Good Kill. Paddington.
Yeah, oh, okay.
Paddington.
Okay, you can't argue with Paddington.
22 Jump Street.
Yeah.
Calvary. What else have we got?
What, the Brendan Gleeson thing?
Yeah. Got a load. We just got when Marnie was there for the Studio Ghibli fans.
Oh, okay.
Into the Woods.
Yeah.
We got some. It was a big year for YA.
Yeah.
So we've got The Maze Runner, and we've got
The Maze Runner was 10 years ago already.
Yeah. And we've got Divergent.
Yeah.
And some of the other YA films.
This isn't really helping your case.
All right, but we've also got Theory of Everything. We've got Mr. Turner.
Oh, come on.
Good Kill. Edge of Tomorrow.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah. I mean they're all brilliant films.
You've named some very good films.
X-Men Days of Future Past.
That is the best X-Men film, yes.
Captain America the Winter Soldier.
Oh, come on. You're just grasping at straws now, aren't you?
2 Days and One Night.
What?
It's a critically acclaimed French film. One of Jennifer Aniston's best performances, Cake. Imitation Game. Come on, I gave you Paddington, Interstellar, Gone Girl.
All right, but yeah, there's some very good films there.
Fury, I think, is a very, very good film.
Okay.
Loses it in the third act.
All right.
But yeah.
Well, thank you, Nadine, for proving my point.
No.
no, there's some very good films.
Paddington.
Yes,
come
Paddington.
on.
Paddington.
John Wick.
Paddington and John Wick are alone are enough to put 2014 in movie history. I will give you that. However, I put it to you that most of the films I mentioned from 1999 have far more cultural legacy than things like Fury.
That's because it's been longer.
No, okay. Very good, very good. So maybe my entire premise for this episode is flawed, but oh well.
No, I think, like I said, we won't know until,
time has
we give it
passed.
another 10 years or something. But, why don't you write in and tell us your favourite years?
Yeah, please do let us know at pictureshow@brumradio.com. Well, there you go. That's about it for our discussion of 1999. Yeah, maybe it was a very arbitrary theme, but I don't know.
Well,
Got to talk about some
you
good
said,
stuff.
a lot of people agree with you.
Yeah, a lot of people do agree
Just
with
not
me.
me.
Now it is time for the reviews section. Now, alas, we did not get the chance to go and see Tom Hardy debut his latest absurd accent in Jeff Nichols' The Bike Riders, which we fully intended to, but life got in the way. So we just managed to see a few little
Not very good
horror films.
So I do think that maybe 2024 won't go down as one of the all-time classic years, but we'll see.
I don't know. We've had Dune Part 2. We've had other things.
Have we?
Anyway, who knows? Maybe The Bike Riders would have been disappointing too, but instead we were disappointed by these films. So first up is Nicolas Cage's latest Paycheck Arcadian. So this is directed by Benjamin Brewer from a screenplay by Michael Nilon? I don't know. And it stars Cage living with his teenage sons in the wake of an undefined apocalyptic event, and we follow them struggling to survive in a valley populated by creepy monsters who only come out at night, not unlike The Watched, which we reviewed last week. So those expecting this to be a silly Nicolas Cage film where he goes full Nicolas Cage will be sorely disappointed. Again, he spends most of the film doing very little indeed, and this is very much a film about his sons. So what did you think of this one, Nadine?
On the positive side, I think the creature design was really interesting.
Yeah, it does
so
this.
if you like your monsters, you might want to check it out if you're a big monster fan. And much of it is left to the imagination, which I also like, because I think sometimes when you see too much, especially on a low budget, it can look really naff.
Yeah.
And so there's definitely a lot left to the imagination. On the downside, probably a bit too much left to the imagination.
Yeah.
There's a lot of, this is one of my pet peeves, but the shaky camera work in this is just infuriating.
It's beyond infuriating. It's like someone gave Paul Greengrass too many Red Bulls and then he just forgot to hire any lights. It just doesn't stop.
A cinematography point of view, I hated it. But also, just from a kind of plot point of view, there's multiple times in this film where things happen that's so confusing because of the camera work and the lighting that you're not even really sure what happened.
Yeah.
And I don't know how intentional. I think it may be to do with the limitations of the budget, and they might be like, "Oh, we can't actually show this thing, so we'll just suggest it." But it's so sort of shaky and silly and ridiculous that you haven't got a clue what's going on.
Yeah, it takes it too far. Like there's stylistic shaky cam, and like I do, I like Paul Greengrass, but that whole style does get on my nerves a bit. But like this takes it to a new level that I've not really seen before, and it is baffling because of it. There's so many bits where you're just like, what? I don't, and it's not like it's arty and it's trying to,
It's like they gave the camera to someone who'd never seen a camera before in their life.
Or nor do they know what they're supposed to be filming. It's just like, should I put it over here for now?
Look at my feet.
So yeah, there's that old bit of filmmaking advice, isn't there? Show, don't tell. And this film does neither of those things. It doesn't tell you what's going on. It certainly doesn't show you what's going on. So you just...
And another thing that I had a problem with was that everyone looked too good for this post-apocalyptic world.
Yes.
Like, I'm sorry, but there's definitely an orthodontist in this post-apocalyptic world. I mean, the teenagers just look too cute and pretty, and I wasn't having none of that. I mean, they've got some bad they've tried to give them some bad haircuts to sort of...
Yeah, not really, though.
Yeah, but... and it's just very... I mean, it's not my favourite genre, the post-apocalyptic genre, but it just feels very by the numbers. I don't think it's doing anything particularly original, apart from, like I said, the creature design, which you almost feel like the film has been built around that.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's a couple of interesting moments, but on the whole, I just find it just not that great.
No.
So I think one, just for the absolute post-apocalyptic and monster sort of aficionados who need to see everything in those genres.
Yeah, I think The Quiet Place has a lot to answer for. I think it's
it definitely feels and sort of what was it, Bird Box?
Yeah,
feels
Bird
like
Box.
It's in that vein of films.
What were you saying the other day? It's telling Americans just
not to look or listen to things, just to carry on blindly.
Don't pay attention.
Yeah.
So needless to say, we were disappointed by Arcadian. So then we went to see The Exorcism. So Russell Crowe's having a bit of a exorcist moment, isn't he?
I love that he's in his exorcist era.
Indeed. So it's not even a year since the wonderfully silly The Pope's Exorcist, which I'm quite fond of because it's ridiculous, and Russell Crowe's just doing a absurd Italian accent. He's
on a scooter, isn't he, at one point?
He just rocks up in a scooter. It's just like, I'm an exorcist for the Pope, and I'm going to,
And that was a hit. That made some money.
Yeah, there's going to be a sequel.
Yeah.
So
I think that's why we have that to thank for The Exorcism.
Yeah. So in this one, he stars as a washed-up actor who is cast in a film, possibly a remake of The Exorcist. It's not quite clear. After his predecessor dies in mysterious circumstances. So this is playing on the idea that films like The Exorcist and The Omen and Poltergeist are cursed because of the demonic forces going on behind the scenes. And it's quite a nice idea. So it's, it's a little bit meta, and there's this kind of like nice Shining feel to it, in that it's a exploration of alcoholism and the creative process, and is Russell Crowe being taken over by booze, or is it a demon? Is it a real demon? And there's some great moments, but maybe it doesn't quite work entirely. And Nadine, you have some thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think it fumbles it in the third act, which is a shame. I've seen some very bad reviews of this film, and while I don't think it is a great film, I think it's a really solid film right up until the end. And I think it does build suspense really well. I do like the relationship with the Russell Crowe character and his daughter.
Yeah, you care about them, don't you?
Yeah, I think there's some interesting stuff there. Interestingly, some fun facts I found out for you.
Oh, okay.
So interestingly, it's directed by Joshua John Miller, who is the son of Jason Miller, who was in The Exorcist.
Oh.
So another Nepo baby. So if you watch this film, and it definitely is playing on The Exorcist. I mean, the sets in this film, I mean, and the reference, I think, what does it call it? The Georgetown something or other. Yeah, which is a reference to the original Exorcist film.
Ah.
So the film that they're remaking in this film, even though it isn't explicit, is The Exorcist. And like you say, it plays on the idea that film was cursed. The Georgetown Project, was the name of the working title of the movie in this film. Another interesting fact, and possibly why, which goes to explain a lot of like, why is Russell Crowe doing 2 Exorcist films in a row? The answer is he didn't. This was filmed in 2019 and shut down due to the pandemic.
Oh, okay.
And then came back and they finished it off in 2023. And I wonder if that is why it's so bad at the end. Like if there was something something happened in between those years. I don't know. Because, like I said, the first two acts are really solid. You know, it looks to build up a really interesting conclusion. It plays with this ambiguity of whether it's supernatural or not. I won't give anything away, but I think while it's doing that, it's at its strongest. I think it loses something once it gives that away.
Yeah.
And I think, like I said, the third act just feels very sort of bog standard. The effects, the sort of makeup effects and so on are not great. And it just kind of loses the goodwill that it's built up in the first two acts.
Yeah.
There's also some confusing plot points as well in this.
Very confusing.
Which we won't go into, but there's a couple of moments when you're like, what happened?
Yeah, how did we get from here to here?
And again, I wonder if that's something to do with this, you know, production that sort of dragged on and was only just finished recently.
Yeah, because the third act very much feels like something that's just kind of been messed around with in the editing room.
It feels like it's been tacked on in some way.
Yeah, it really doesn't.
So I'd be interested if that's how it was scripted originally, or if there were issues with further issues with finishing the film. I don't know, because that's where it really loses it. I think Russell Crowe gives a decent performance. It's not one of his best, but I think he gives a good performance. I think the other supporting actors do well. I mean, David Hyde Pierce is in this.
Yeah, really nice to see David Hyde Pierce in something, because you don't see him that often anymore.
Chloe Bailey from Chloe and Halle, the singers, she's in this. She doesn't do that much in it. Sam Worthington is in it, but in a kind of blink and you miss role.
Yeah. And is it Adam Goldberg? Is it playing the director?
Yes. Oh my God, I'm so glad you mentioned him. So if you're a fan of Friends, you'll know him as Eddie in Friends.
Yeah, right.
And he's brilliant. He's not in it a lot, but when he's in it, he's brilliant. And I think, you know, maybe as a filmmaker, that's sort of bumps this film up for me, just because he's the worst director ever. Like the things that he says and does are just like things you should never say and do.
There's this wonderful scene where he's trying to get Russell Crowe to give a good performance just by telling him how irredeemable he is as a person, and it's just such a great moment. And it made me think as well. It's like, oh, actually, Mel Gibson would have been some good meta casting because whilst Russell Crowe has certainly had his kind of,
run-ins with the press.
Yes, falls from grace, if you will. He's never been as abjectly hated by the public as Mel Gibson has, and I think that would have been some good casting. But I think Russell Crowe is amazing in it. He's great. He's really going for it.
So I think, if you're a fan of supernatural horror, if you're a fan of the original Exorcist, you might get something out of this, all the kind of references and the sort of meta sort of references to that film. But it, like we said, it loses it in the third act. Not a terrible film, a pretty solid film with some nice touches, some decent performances, but nothing to write home about. Probably one for the kind of supernatural horror fans, the Russell Crowe fans, and the fans of The Exorcist.
Yeah, well, probably not fans of The Exorcist, to be honest.
If you're an exorcism completist.
Yeah.
But if you want to watch a much sillier, more fun exorcism film starring Russell Crowe, then you want to check out The Pope's Exorcist.
Yeah, cannot wait for the sequel.
Yeah, but I love that he's in his full-on B-movie phase.
He's having a lot of fun.
He's loving it. Silly accents all over the place. In Thor, he was doing like a Greek accent or something.
Yeah, I'm loving this stage in Russell. Even though this isn't the best film, I'm still glad it exists because it's another addition to the Russell Crowe canon of just ridiculousness. So
I want to see what he does next.
Yeah.
Exciting.
Well, The Pope's Exorcist too, I suppose.
Yeah.
But yeah. Well done, Russell. We love you. Please come on the Brum Picture Show. I'd love that. And also, I'd love to go and see his upcoming tour, his indoor garden party that they're calling it. So that's going to be coming to Shepherd's Bush Empire and various other places. And
is that a musical tour?
Yes. Well, I think it might be more of a kind of evening with Russell Crowe type thing. So a mixture of music and anecdotes. At least I'd hope that's what it is.
Well, he's making his money still, isn't he?
Yeah.
He's out there. He's working.
Bless him.
He's a jobbing actor.
Presumably he's in a lot of debt with some of the choices that he's made. But, bless you, Russell Crowe. So there we go. So that's about all we've got time for on the review section this week. But we've just got time for Nadine's roundup of local news and events.
Well, July is not a disappointing month for us.
Yay.
We've got some great films coming up. So, as you said, 1999, we've got Buena Vista Social Club playing at the Cuban Embassy on the 11th of July. We're going to have live music. We're going to have Cuban vegan sandwiches, Cuban cocktails. It's going to be really good.
Muy bien.
Muy bien. Buenísimo.
Buenísimo.
So you get your dancing shoes on and join us at the Cuban Embassy. On the 8th of July, we've teamed up with the Mockingbird and we're going to be showing Happy Together. I strongly recommend this film. If you're a One Car Wife fan, do check this out. If you love Chungking Express or In the Mood for Love, it's a story of two men from Hong Kong who moved to Argentina. They have this tumultuous love affair, and it stars Tony Leung Chiu-wai and Leslie Chung, two of the greatest Hong Kong film actors of all time. And Leslie Chung, who unfortunately is no longer with us, was one of the first Hong Kong stars to be openly bisexual and LGBT. So it's a real landmark film. We also teamed up with Whatever Pays the Rent, and we'll be showing The Umbrellas of Cherbourg at Pan Pan in Digbeth. And that is a film that has inspired many films since, such as La La Land. It's a beautiful technicolor musical, and you really don't want to miss that. And we'll have French fancies and French pop music, and it'll be, again, a big event. And there'll be zines for everybody. So if you're a fan of zines, do check that out. Other film events to be checking out, from the 26th of June to the 7th of July, we're going to have the Birmingham Indian Film Festival at various locations. On the 2nd of July, Journey Film Club will be showing the Bob Fosse Classic Cabaret at the Birmingham LGBT Centre. On the 13th of July, there'll be a crossing screening with Q&A at the Mockingbird. Journey Film Club will be showing Blue Jean on the 16th of July at the Birmingham LGBT Centre. And Whatever Pays the Rent will be showing But I'm a Cheerleader at the Hare and Hounds on the 24th of July. So a really hot July for you. Summer of Screen B14, I'm calling it. They're calling it. Somebody's calling it that. But yeah, it's a hot film summer is what I'm calling it. So do check out some of those events. Check us out on our socials at Screen B14. All the information, all the tickets and stuff are there.
Good stuff. Well, there we go. Thanks very much, Nadine. That all sounds very exciting. That's about it for this week's show. Thank you very much for joining us as always. Do be sure to join us next time where we'll be talking about something else.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, it's goodbye from me, Paul.
It's goodbye from me, Nadine.
And that's
Goodbye.
it. Goodbye.
Adios.
Adios, amigos. Muchachos. Gracias.
You have been listening to The Brum Picture Show, a Screen B14 production for Brum Radio. Tune in next time for more film fun, and don't forget to email us at pictureshow@brumradio.com. Thanks for listening. Goodbye.
Sorry, this is a bit off topic, but I went to the bathroom at the Y Theatre in Leicester.
Okay.
And there was a tiny little door.
Oh.
And I was like, part of me was like, that's probably where they keep the toilet paper.
Yeah.
But another part of me was like, what if it's like a portal into John Malkovich's head?
Yeah.
And so I thought, I have to check. I have to open this door.
Was it John Malkovich's head?
No. It was just a kind of empty space.
That's still more intriguing.
I didn't go inside it. Maybe if I'd gone inside it.
Well, that's where you went wrong.
Yeah.
You should have crawled into the hole.
I couldn't resist. But that was like the first thought. I was like, is this a John Malkovich door?
Yeah. Oh.
So I don't know. I'm not John Malkovich, so.
If you could crawl into anyone's head, whose head would you crawl into?
First thought that came to mind was Charlize Theron, but I don't know if that's from our Mad Max era.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind crawling into Charlize Theron for the day. Sorry. That was crude.
Yes, that was crude. Yeah, I don't know. Or maybe that's just from talking about Fury Road the other day. And I watched Atomic Blonde for the first time.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, she just, kicks butt.
Yeah. Well,
And she's tall. I wouldn't mind being tall.
Okay. You'd crawl into...
Because I don't, if when you're in the supermarket and you're trying to get the thing off the high shelf and you have to wait for a tall person to come by.
All right. That's what you do with this incredible metaphysical miracle, is you'd
I'd
get
be
things on high shelves.
Multi-millionaire, former supermodel, Oscar-winning badass bee.
Well, that's true. But then surely you don't need to reach anything in the supermarket. You just have your entourage do it for you.
Maybe.
Anyway.
Well, I'm sure she's humble.
Well, anyway, that was a tangent. But one I enjoyed very much.
Thank you for listening to this Brum Radio podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and rate us on your podcast app.